So could we potentially be seeing the end of Glock in Maryland?
Let's see what happens with Senate Bill 334.
Welcome to the Urban Defense Podcast, and today's episode is going to be the first in a three-part series on the Maryland legislative session. But first, let me introduce our special returning guest, candidate for Maryland House of Delegates, District 42A, Alex Harlan.
Great to be back.
Alex, glad to have you back.
Thank you for having me.
When can we vote for you?
So the primary is June 23rd, 2026.
And when is early voting?
June 11th to June 18th.
And where can we find more about you?
I've got a website, www.alexfordelegate.com. My Instagram handle is alexharlan42a, and my Facebook page is just Alex Harlan.
And last question, District 42A, tell me who's in it.
So right now, I am the only Republican who has filed, and, knock on wood, let's keep it that way, because once that happens, I'll be able to expand my services and help other Republican candidates really getting out there in more of like the more competitive districts. I do have a Democrat challenger. She is a member of the Democrat Central Committee up there. And, game on.
And what does your district encompass, just for any of our viewers and listeners?
So it's primarily North Baltimore County. I like to say the bottom line of it is Shawan Road. And then the southeast part of it is the Jacksonville, Long Green, Baldwin area. And then it basically hugs the Carroll and Harford County lines all the way up to the Pennsylvania line. So you've got the Hereford Zone, Parkton, Whitehall, Freeland, Pretty Boy Reservoir. So that whole region of like North Baltimore County, God's country, horse country. It's beautiful out there.
And for those that don't know, the Maryland legislative session began on Wednesday, January the 14th, and goes until April the 23rd, which is sine die. And today we're going to be discussing relevant firearms bills of interest. This is proposed legislation. Some of it you've seen before, some of it you may be seeing for the first time. So let's go ahead and get into it. And let me sort through my notes here, of which there are many.
So this year, they say they're not going to raise our taxes. We'll see.
I don't trust that as far as I can throw it. And it's actually fun to mention this. Back when I was working down in the state Senate, there was this one lobbyist, a guy named Bob Enton, and he always had the same saying every year: the only good bill is a dead one.
I like it.
I can't necessarily argue with a lot of it.
Well, some bills that should be put to rest we can talk about right now. The first one we're going to be talking about is going to be House Bill 83. This is cross-filed as Senate Bill 20. Family and Law Enforcement Protection Act. It's listed on 2A Maryland, which, by the way, is a great resource, and it is listed as opposed, position opposed. Andrew, what is this?
So in Maryland, if you are the respondent, also known as the defendant, in a protective order hearing, there's going to be a temporary protective order and then a final protective order. If the final protective order is granted for up to 1 year, you cannot possess firearms. The temporary protective order, you also are required to surrender your firearms. In this, it would increase the pressure on police agencies to go out and enforce the prohibition of firearm possession and encourage them to get search and seizure warrants if you have not surrendered your firearms after service of the temporary or final protective order, to get a search and seizure warrant, come in your house, find them, and take them. And if some enterprising individuals will say, what guns? I lost them all in a boating accident, or I sold them the other day. You're required to have paperwork documenting their transfer within the preceding 30 days, if that is the line one is taking.
Sounds like a lot of avenues for overreach, in my opinion.
That is a very serious concern, and someone who is the respondent in a temporary protective order has not had an opportunity to present a case, deny the allegations, cross-examine the accuser, present their own evidence. So a number of people are concerned about one being deprived of their Second Amendment rights, their ability to remain in the home. I mean, so much more goes into these protective orders, the use of a vehicle, pet. So there's a lot of moving parts. And the key thing, just whenever one is the respondent in a protective order, get a lawyer as soon as you can.
So let me ask you this, Andrew, just a couple things. So would this be, in your opinion, an instance of someone potentially being punished before they're even proved guilty?
In this case, especially the gap between the temporary protective order being issued and then the week that goes in between that and the final protective order, yes, there would be one's liberties and rights would be infringed on during that period before they have an opportunity to refute, dispute, or challenge the accusations.
And then one final thing. So I know that there was like a stipulation that I saw with, now this is more federal, but ATF coming in to confiscate a firearm. And there's a stipulation where if you don't surrender the firearm under protest, they basically maintain the right to destroy your firearm. Would that be applicable to this law, or is that something else?
So this law would control what the Maryland police agencies would do with the firearm, and this would require them to give you options to transfer it to a FFL, to transfer it to a non, because if the final protective order is granted, you are a prohibited person at that point, to transfer them to otherwise, or to relinquish them to the agency.
And I would add, too, that it says that if the petitioner says that the individual has a handgun qualification license or wear and carry permit, they will have to answer the length of time that they knew the respondent or lived with the respondent, the potential location of the firearm or firearms, the last time they saw the respondent's firearm, make, model of the respondent's firearm, how many and what type of firearms the respondent may have access to, and whether the respondent keeps the firearms in the respondent's car, and if so, the make, model of car, and the serial number, or I'm sorry, and the license plate number of the car. And also, along with surrendering your firearms, you would also surrender your physical wear and carry permit and HQL.
And the police are instructed to actually take them.
That's what it says.
Yeah.
Yeah. So whether that's at the time that you're provided the information from the court, or at the time that the search and seizure warrant is in fact executed, and again, it can be executed with or without your presence.
Just one other thing, it has just one sponsor in the House, and we will see what happens. It has been introduced previously, did not pass last session, so I don't know if it will or won't this year.
Well, I mean, I do remember now, this is kind of tangential because it wasn't necessarily with firearms policy. I did attend a meeting earlier in the month at the Hunt Valley Business Forum, and one of their guest speakers was a gentleman by the name of Grayson Wiggins, who is part of the government relations team for the Maryland Chamber of Commerce. And he, in his predictions, for lack of a better term, talked about how we're probably going to see less involving taxes, whether it be tax increases, tax decreases, or what have you, and more so this session is going to be more about policy. So I think there's a greater likelihood of something like this going forward.
Tax decreases in Maryland?
So now it doesn't sound likely, but I am very fearful that there is a potential situation where perhaps the Democrat caucus and more come together and say, okay, we're going to repeal this little tax that doesn't really do anything. We're going to repeal that one so that later in the 2026 election, all the Democrats can run on, I voted to lower your taxes.
I understand, appreciate, and empathize with your concern. With the fiscal hole we have been maneuvered into in this state, I think they're back to looking in the couch cushions again for every nickel, dime, and quarter.
I mean, unfortunately, yes. And also, just one thing I did want to say for the audience, just from my experience being down in Annapolis, if you struggle like I did with the legal jargon in the actual bills, when you go to the bill on the MGA website, a couple days before the hearing, they're supposed to post what's called the fiscal policy note, and that can put things into better layman's terms for people that aren't lawyers.
All right, moving right along. So House Bill 94, the public safety handgun permits expiration and renewal periods, retired law enforcement. Andrew.
This would change the expiration of a concealed carry permit to bona fide law enforcement officers who retired in good standing or are still active to 5 years from its expiration date, more than what the mere mortals receive.
I am very familiar with this bill. I think a couple years ago when I was working with Senator West, we were the sponsor on this on the Senate side. And typically what happens with this bill is it goes in, even Democrats don't see an issue with it because it's law enforcement. But then the Second Amendment advocates will come in and say, we need to amend this so that it applies to everybody, which is a double-edged sword because, sure, I have no problem with that. I mean, frankly, I think we need a constitutional carry anyways. But as soon as that gets introduced and talked about, because the Democrats have a supermajority in both chambers, the bill usually dies then.
So you're saying they amend it. It starts out as a law enforcement bill, and then they amend it to everyone, and then that's where it kind of goes to
They
die.
attempt to, yeah. They attempt to, and then it just it sits in the committee chair's drawer.
Okay. So let's see here. House Bill 126, which is cross-filed as Senate Bill 27, regulated firearms 7-day waiting period exceptions. Andrew.
Everyone just loves waiting 7 days to pick up the latest handgun one purchased. This bill would remove that restriction for, once again, bona fide law enforcement officers retired in good standing and someone who possesses a wear and carry permit. So this would be wonderful if you have gone through all the required classes, such as the wonderful classes offered by Urban Defense. If you have passed everything, passed the numerous checks that go along with obtaining a concealed carry permit, then you would not have to wait an additional 7 days every time you purchased a firearm. This bill makes sense. It's wonderful. Call your delegates, call your senator, tell them how you feel about it, and watch, unfortunately, the bill probably go nowhere.
I hope you're wrong in that regard, but I will say for the record when we post this out into the internet, if for some reason it doesn't pass this session, I would be more than happy to co-sponsor or even sponsor that bill next year.
Currently only has one sponsor, so if you're in the House next year, it will have two.
Amen.
All right. House Bill 197, cross-filed as Senate Bill 118, Comprehensive Community Safety Funding Act. Andrew.
Times are tough here in Maryland. Things are expensive. It's very difficult to run a government. They need more money. Where could we find more money, gentlemen?
BG&E.
That's an idea. Alex?
How about they cut back on all these wasteful government programs so that we're not in a deficit? How about they get rid of the blueprint because it's going to be terrible?
Well, gentlemen, that is not what 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 members of the House of Delegates feel would be appropriate. They would prefer, here we go again, an 11% excise tax on all fun things firearms related. And this, once again, it would be a little bit of a complicated scheme. You would not exactly see it directly, but I am certain that the various firearms manufacturers, suppliers, etc. here in Maryland aren't going to just eat this tax out of their own generosity, but no, probably almost certainly pass it through to you. And this bill, again, 11%, and it's going to affect a lot of things related to a firearm, and it's to be collected with the gross receipts. So once again, you're not going to see it directly, but it will be there. And it means any firearm and any firearm accessory, magazine loader, scope, optic, stock, grip, handguard, bulletproof body armor. All of those will be subject to an excise tax when being sold in this state.
And a firearm silencer, which is number 7.
So, you think you don't have to pay for a tax stamp? Welcome to the excise tax.
All I know right now is that if that passes, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, Delaware, got to be jumping up and down for joy, at least the gun stores, because I know they're about to get a lot more business from Maryland residents.
So there is some interesting stuff in here, and just real quick. So 26% of the funds would go to the Maryland Violence Intervention and Prevention Program Fund. 26% would go to the Center for Firearms Violence Prevention and Intervention within the Maryland Department of Health, 20% to the Coordinated Community Support Partnership Fund, 20% to the Survivors of Homicide Victims Grant Program within the Governor's Office of Crime Prevention, 4% to the Maryland Trauma Physician Services Fund, 4% to the R. Adams Crowley Shock Trauma. And you were talking about out-of-state companies.
An out-of-state company selling directly here into Maryland would be subject to the excise tax. But I think, Alex, your point is the same item is probably going to probably even be more than 11% because everyone's going to have to put out a markup in for the administrative expense of this. It's probably going to be 15% cheaper just across the imaginary line in Pennsylvania.
Exactly.
So real quick, the tax imposed under this section does not apply to the sale of a firearm or firearm accessory or ammunition to a law enforcement agency, the Armed Forces of the United States, the National Guard, or a law enforcement officer. The tax imposed under this section does not apply to the sale of a firearm, accessory, or ammunition to a resident of the state if the sale is made in person in another state and is not required to be processed through a Maryland-based federally licensed firearm dealer. So that would be those accessories that would not require that type of transfer,
yes,
so to speak. And I also made a couple other notes here that I found to be interesting, and maybe some of our viewers or listeners will as well. The tax imposed under this section applies to a retail sale made on or after July 1st of 27 by a federally licensed dealer that is not a large retailer. And they define that as a retail footprint of more than 20,000 square feet. 2, for any other federally licensed firearms dealer, a retail sale made on or after July the 1st of 28. And it says, if a federally licensed firearms dealer is located outside of the state, the tax imposed under this section applies only if the federally licensed firearms dealer during the previous calendar year or current calendar year derives gross revenue from the state of firearms to residents of this state that exceeds $100,000 or sells firearms to residents of the state for delivery into the state in 200 or more separate transactions.
And there's a reason why they have this language in here. This goes years ago, and things have completely flip-flopped. Originally, back in the 90s, the Supreme Court said you don't have to collect sales tax or excise taxes somewhere where you don't maintain a presence. And that's led to Amazon thriving and would lead to certain people being upset if Amazon opened up a facility in their state because then they could buy everything with no sales tax, if you remember those good old days. The Supreme Court has since changed their mind and said that if you have ties, business ties to a state over a certain threshold, even if you don't have a physical presence in that state, the state can force you to collect sales taxes, etc. So that's why they have these minimums in there, because if you were Bob's Firearms in Arkansas and you sold a one-off piece to someone here in Maryland, they would have a strong constitutional claim to oppose this. Now, I think there are constitutional problems with this law, once again, because you are taxing a fundamental right, i.e. protected by the Second Amendment, and there is plenty of case law which discourages such things. You cannot tax ink to be used in newspapers at a different rate. So a lot of people are drawing the analogy you could not tax firearms and firearms accessories at a different rate. Only time in the courts will tell, though.
Okay, moving right along. House Bill 284, cross-filed as Senate Bill 160, public safety, licensed firearms dealers, notification regarding potential security lapses. They took no position as far as 2A Maryland. Andrew.
So if, for all our viewers that own firearms, distribution establishments, aka gun stores, if someone burglarizes your establishment, attempts to burglarize your establishment, robs you, attempts to rob you, does anything along these lines. In addition to notifying the ATF, you have to notify local law enforcement within 24 hours of you discovering it or it occurring. That's it.
So, first of all, I'm trying to understand why we would need to compel gun store owners to do that. I feel like that's something that they would want to get on and call the police if their gun store got burglarized. And the reason I raise a stink about it, not that I think like on its face, like reporting to the police if your gun store's been robbed is a bad idea, but just there was like someone did the math somewhere that when you account for just labor, paper, research, every bill that gets produced by the Maryland General Assembly during a session, you're looking at around $5,500 or so per bill. It's like, why are we wasting money on common sense stuff that people are already probably going to do?
I mean, this to me seems like this would be something you would do as a gun store anyway.
Yeah.
So, I mean, unless, so in the comments, if anyone has an understanding of why this exists other than to waste $5,000, please let us know in the comments.
Let me ask, well, not ask, say, this bill was introduced by the chairman of the Judiciary Committee by request of the state police. So someone out there has to know something they would love to share with us. Did someone's gun store get pilfered and they just didn't tell anyone? Or are there gun store burglaries occurring all over this state and we just don't know? Please share with us. And we all know they do happen. And I've seen people, I've been in court with my friends who own gun stores watching people being prosecuted for it. So are there unreported gun store burglaries going on? Tell us about it.
Okay, moving right along. House Bill 303, Handguns, Wear, Carry, and Transport Laws, Handbook publication, gets a support from 2A Maryland. And we've seen this before, haven't we, Andrew?
Every year we see this, and every year it does not advance for whatever reason. Once again, Delegate Grammer is asking that the Maryland Attorney General, Anthony Brown, produce a book every year on or before October 1st that would tell you in plain language that can be easily understood without any special knowledge of the application of state laws, federal laws, or case law in a format that can be easily used to teach a firearm safety course required under this section. So, Dwayne, you would have a booklet that you could give to all your students, explaining to them clearly, concisely, and easily all of the applicable laws.
I see no problem with that.
Do they not want people properly defending themselves and legally carrying?
Maybe they want you to screw up so that they can convict you and make you a prohibited person.
As a lawyer, tell me more.
Not to be extremely speculative, but I wonder if this is just the reason that Anthony Brown is ignoring this is just because maybe he's doing some stat padding before the 2030 Democrat primary for governor. Did I say that out loud?
You heard it here first, ladies and gentlemen.
Brooke Learman versus Anthony Brown, 2030. Watch it happen.
You heard it here.
Moving right along. House Bill 365. This is not, or it was not at the time of printing on the 2A Maryland page. We did want to include this right to own, possess, purchase, and carry a handgun, as I'd like to call it, the Guns and Marijuana Bill. Andrew.
Once again, those of our listeners who enjoy marijuana, and they've gotten a marijuana card, you cannot be purchasing firearms. You cannot get a CCW. I don't know. Can you get an HQL, Dwayne?
You can get the HQL. You just can't buy the gun.
Well, now, if this was to pass, a person may not be denied the right to purchase, own, possess, or carry a firearm under this title solely on the basis that the person is authorized to use medical cannabis under Title 36, Subtitle 3 of the Alcoholic Beverages and Cannabis article.
So how would that interact with federal law as it applies to NICS, if you know?
We would have to find out. I don't know how the federal government would react to this. I imagine the state police would not be a fan of this, but this is an option if this was to pass.
I mean, could supersede federal law?
No, it could not.
So we have
That's
to,
never stopped us before here in Maryland.
so as Nancy Pelosi said, we have to
Yeah.
pass it first to see what's in it.
Well, so you would be in a situation where I would imagine if you were the state police and you were reviewing an application, and I'm not saying marijuana, one way or the other or anything about this, but I'm just from a practical standpoint, you would no longer be able to tell or you could still tell, but you couldn't deny them if they had a cannabis card.
Okay. Alex.
So, I mean, I think if this passes, libertarians everywhere rejoice. We might move up maybe 1 or 2 spots in the Cato Institute's Freedom of the 50 States report. But I mean, I think it goes back to what we've said, like when I was on here previously, pro-gun, anti-idiot. I would just hope that everybody would be responsible enough to not use a firearm or operate a motor vehicle or anything like that high. And I think that goes back to that should fall on the responsibility of the gun owner rather than the government telling you what you can and cannot do.
I think, fortunately or unfortunately, we will never find out, however, because I think this bill goes nowhere.
I would have to agree with that too. I mean, I wonder also, and again, speaking kind of pie in the sky if this ever did pass, because I know that there, and don't quote me on this, there's some group of scientists trying to develop, almost for lack of a better term, a weed breathalyzer. I'm not sure if that would be able to help advance that so they can know if you are actually impaired by cannabis. Again, I don't know. It was floating around. I remember I was in judicial proceedings and one of the back rooms and some of the staff were talking about it, but it was more so for driving.
I wonder if I don't know if a breathalyzer would work unless you're blowing smoke out of it, but
Yeah.
I mean, maybe an oral swab of some sort.
just conceptually, just something that can basically rate how high you are, and then they would probably have to set a standard for what's considered too high to operate a motor vehicle and all of that. Because I mean, you probably know from traffic stops, it can be rather subjective.
And meet the Fourth Amendment if you're actually applying an oral swab to me.
Yours would be a rectal swab.
Oh, thank you, sir. Thank you. And this bill does not have any cross-filed bill in the Senate and only one sponsor in the House.
I think, again, I'm not a betting man. House always wins, but I think that bill dies.
So if you know of any type of marijuana breathalyzer or oral or rectal swabbing devices, please put it in the comments and we'll look at it. I'm just curious. Okay, moving right along to the Senate bills now, and we will not be going back through the ones that are cross-filed because that's redundant. So we'll be starting with Senate Bill 181, which is hunting lead and lead-based ammunition phase out. So you hunters out there, and it's not just about duck hunting either. There's going to be other stuff touched by this, Andrew.
If you enjoy lead slugs, if you enjoy, I don't even know what other
Lead shot.
Yeah, lead shot. But just in general, I know it's extremely common, extremely prevalent in hunting. This would be to foster its elimination in Maryland. I know it is an extremely controversial topic, as environmental groups feel that you're destroying the planet. Other groups would point out that the volume of lead shot being fired in any one area is so de minimis, it couldn't make any impact whatsoever. But we will see what the legislature says. Dwayne.
So I made some notes in this this interesting thing here, and I just made some highlights. So I'll read them to everyone. It's in the beginning in the preamble. Whereas England, Scotland, and Wales will phase out the use of lead ammunition by 2029. So, of course, we're so interested in what England, Scotland, and Wales are doing.
Known for their strong Second Amendment.
Yes, as well.
Strong first, too, especially on social media.
Yes.
That's right.
We want to be more like them.
Well, I mean, if we were over there, we'd probably be in handcuffs at this very moment.
Oh, we'd be shot by now.
Yes.
With the guns we aren't allowed to use.
But not with lead bullets.
No
lead poisoning
not.
for us as we bleed out.
Well, look, I mean, lead comes from the ground. We're just trying to put it back. That's all. All right. Moving right along. Whereas over 500 peer-reviewed studies recognize that there is no safe level of lead exposure for humans, and whereas peer-reviewed studies have shown that individuals working at shooting ranges have developed severe toxicity and increased health challenges as a result of exposure to lead. So I can say that I am familiar with certain governmental and non-governmental ranges where lead blood testing takes place, and that is not the case. If you are ingesting it somehow or in acting in an unsafe way with it, perhaps, but I don't think it's as widespread as they would like you to believe. Non-lead ammunition includes in the definitions section ammunition in which there is less than 1% lead. So there'd have to be less than 1% of lead in this non-lead ammunition, or any federally approved non-toxic ammunition.
And I'll be honest, I don't hunt. Come at me. But I have no problem with hunting. There's going to be a massive disparity in the cost of ammunition, I imagine.
Yes, absolutely there will be. And I mentioned in my reloading video that we re-released, I think was last year or whatever it was, the end of last year, that a friend of mine from work and I were looking to replicate some tungsten upland, basically bird shot out of tungsten. And the cost per box, 5 rounds, would have been about $50.
That sounds very efficient.
So essentially, on or before July 1st, 2029, this bill says, the department shall require the use of non-lead ammunition for the hunting of all game species. The department shall authorize the use of lead ammunition for muzzle loaders, handguns, rifles, and shotguns if non-lead ammunition is not commercially available for that specific weapon, which it is for most. On or before July 1st, 27, non-lead ammunition for hunting pen-raised birds on regulated shooting areas will be a thing of the past. On or before July 1st, 2028, the use of non-lead ammunition for hunting upland game birds, webless migratory game birds, and wild turkey will be a thing of the past. Or I'm sorry, that will be in effect. You'll have to use non-lead at that point. And then on or before July 1st, 2029, the Department of Natural Resources shall adopt regulations requiring non-lead ammunition for muzzle loaders, handguns, rifles, and shotguns used for hunting deer or hunting any other game species not specified in this section. So it would all go by July 1st of 29. And by the way, for those of you that are reloaders out there, for those of you that are bullet casters, if you're using those rounds for hunting, that would be also verboten under this. Now, there is
Straight to jail.
Straight to jail. And there was not yet in this anywhere discussion on not allowing cast lead, whatever rounds at ranges, whether they be inside or outside, but I'm sure that'll be coming. Alex.
I have seen this bill before because some animal rights activists actually came to our office to see if Senator West would be a co-sponsor or sponsor the bill. Obviously, no. And the argument that they made was, oh, well, if hunters are shooting ducks or whatever, like, we're not against hunting, but they are. But they could poison themselves because of like the lead left over for like when they shot them.
Well, and one of the things they mentioned in there was that it was mentioned in the bill, I didn't read it, was that studies have shown that when these animals are struck with these lead rounds, that the rounds can splinter and break off and pieces of lead can go into the meat and therefore poison the person or whatever.
How many adults are consuming such high levels of lead that it is unsafe?
I think most of the Democratic Party somehow, because clearly there's some sort of brain injury going on there. I don't know.
Now, Dwayne.
I mean, unless hunters are going out and trying to just hunt lead paint chips, I mean, I don't think.
I've heard they're delicious.
I mean, I'm more of a bleach fan myself. It's my
Yes.
drink of choice, and Drano too.
Well,
Drano.
Tide Pods, but nonetheless,
Great snack.
Yes,
Nutrient
yes,
dense.
yes. So for those of you that are hunters out there, and even if you're not a concealed carry holder or interested in some of the things we're talking about, this involves you, and it will directly impact your ability to utilize these types of ammunition and will require you to then buy much more expensive ammunition, which is non-lead, which generally is going to be tungsten or some derivative of that.
Until they come for that.
Well, then we'll have to make them out of depleted uranium and then gold. So that'll raise the cost of every round to about $1,000 to $2,000 a piece.
And some would say they would not view that as a bad thing.
They want to make it as inconvenient as possible because they know that they can't directly take away our Second Amendment. So they're just going to try to eat away at it to make it just damn near impossible. I mean, it's just, and that's one of the things that I talked about when I was first on here, is that I want to be a watchdog for all these crazy gun policies and then go on the offensive and just chip away at them, because again, like, you're not directly attacking it, but like, we know what you're doing.
Yeah. It's a roundabout way of chipping away at it, just like all of those delicious lead-based paint chips. All right, moving right along. Senate Bill 334, machine gun convertible pistols. Andrew.
3 sponsors in the Senate. After January 1st, 2027, a person may not manufacture, sell, offer for sale, purchase, receive, or transfer a machine gun convertible pistol. What is a machine gun convertible pistol, Dwayne?
I was going to ask you the same question.
A machine gun convertible pistol means any semi-automatic pistol with a cruciform trigger bar that can be readily converted by hand or by using common household tools into a machine gun by the installation or attachment of a pistol converter as a replacement for the slide's backplate without any additional engineering, machining, or modification of the pistol's trigger mechanism.
So the term cruciform, and again, come at us in the comments if I'm incorrect on this, but to my Glock armor training, the cruciform is a Glock specific term because it looks like kind of like a crucifix, like a cross. So to me, it seems like they're going specifically at Glock and Glock type pistols.
It includes a pistol with a cruciform trigger bar and a polymer notch or other piece of polymer molded into the rear of the pistol frame where a pistol converter can be attached or installed. A pistol converter, Dwayne, what is that?
So we did an episode on conversion devices. Actually, we talked about it during the Glock lawsuit video. So I'll put a link somewhere in here so that y'all can go to that and watch it if you want. But it's interesting that they talk about a polymer. What did they call it? A polymer backplate, polymer piece?
Machine gun converter pistol includes a pistol with a cruciform trigger bar and a polymer notch or other piece of polymer molded into the rear of the pistol frame where a pistol converter can be attached or installed.
So again, it goes to show how these people don't know what they're talking about. So I would assume they're referring to the backplate, the polymer piece that is the backplate of the slide, which is where the quote unquote conversion device would attach. It doesn't attach to the frame. It attaches to the rear of the slide. So if I were Glock, perhaps, maybe I would just start selling my model without that polymer piece, selling it as a anodized piece of aluminum, and maybe you've gotten past that.
These are ideas. I think this is a very dangerous bill, and I think already Glock is making changes now with the latest generation because of their fear of this, but this would prevent one from transferring an already existing Glock in this state to anyone else. So we will have, imagine the market effects of this, to where Glock pistols, a very common firearm, are going to be untransferable after that date.
So is this the beginning of Glock becoming a full-on horse breeding company? For those of you who don't know, just go to Glock's website and scroll through some of their products.
Horse breeding.
Glock sells horse father fluids now on their website.
Come on,
I'm not joking.
You mean Glock the gun company?
Yes,
sells.
Glock the gun company sells horse.
So the reason that we're not going to put this on screen, probably for maybe 2 reasons, but the main reason is that anytime we have shown Glock's website on one of our videos, the video gets demonetized. I don't even know if I'm allowed to say the Glock website, the terms. You can say horse, but I can't say Glock website.
I'm not making it up. Like, you go on their website, it's right there.
Andrew, bring it up.
I'm looking.
All right, so we can't show you on the screen demonetization, but
hopefully it's just like a mason jar.
You better be wrong.
The Glock Gen 6, Glock protection, shooting tips, Glock shop. Is that where I need to be looking here?
Maybe go to the search bar and just type in horse. I'll be amazed.
It's not April, Alex. Are you pulling our leg here? I'm not seeing horse.
Not yet.
Yeah. Yeah, now
That's
as
later.
soon as they see this video, we're going to be off to the races here. And when the Preakness is back in Baltimore, I know where I want my horse to
No,
come
but
from.
I swear, like, it was like all over. I mean, now granted, it was like gun too, but there was like a lot of talk about how like you went on their website and it was horse specimens. Like, I swear I'm not yanking your guy's chain.
You know, maybe the company itself has invested in horse racing in the sense that they are invested in the breeding of racing horses, and that's what you were getting at. But I don't think they sell jugs of horse semen on their website.
Wait. Hang on.
That is the most expensive fluid in the world, Dwayne.
Right next to Whiteout.
So look up, is it Glock Horse Performance Center? So it is nonetheless like
This can't even be a real Glock site. This is I hope you're going to get a virus by
Yeah.
opening that. I want to know how you found this.
Glock Horse Performance. Oh, the Glock. I see this here. Okay, the Glock Horse Performance Center in Austria. Okay, that's just they're sponsoring it. Similar to how M&T Bank does not own a stadium in downtown Baltimore.
I swear to you guys, I was not trying to yank your chain. Like they were selling horse stuff for a while.
One of our viewers, please go to the Glock Horse Performance Center in, I can't even pronounce it, but it's somewhere in Austria, and let us know what offerings they have available.
Maybe we should send producer Jimmy.
We may never see him again.
Well, because he'll go to Australia as opposed to Austria. All right. Moving right along, and this will be the last bill of the night, Senate Bill 362, Child's Access to Firearms. And this would be an addition to existing law, Andrew.
So currently, if you allow a child to access your firearms unlawfully through negligence or something of that nature, it's currently a $1,000 fine. Unfortunately, there have been some tragedies in Maryland recently of children having access to firearms that they should not have. This would change the penalty to be up to 5 years in prison as opposed to just currently a $1,000 fine.
Alex.
I mean, to be fair, I do think that parents do need to be responsible with their firearms. I mean, again, pro-gun, anti-idiot. But I don't see how this effectively stops anything. Because, I mean, the sad reality is that if a kid is going to try to bust into a safe, they're going to bust into it.
Well, I think you'd be fine in that instance from what the law requires. You cannot store or leave a loaded firearm in a location where the person known or should have known that an unsupervised minor has access to the firearms. I think, unfortunately, we have several tragedies where firearms are left out loaded and completely unattended, and minors are getting access to them. At the same time, this does become a very slippery slope.
Oh, absolutely. But I mean, nonetheless, this kind of goes back to, again, just being a responsible gun owner. If you're just going to like leave it loaded out on the desk, I mean, what do you expect is going to happen? I mean, if you leave it under your pillow, I mean, you probably have a greater likelihood of blowing your own head off.
Well, look, I think it goes back to, like you said, responsibility of the parents. But today's day and age, parents aren't teaching their children about firearms. They're not teaching them about gun safety. I grew up around guns, so I take that kind of for granted. But we deal with people all the time that are coming to classes or coming to my line of work that have never touched a gun before in their life, and they've never had any instruction on it or anything. So it's part about being responsible with your guns. The other part of being responsible with guns is modeling correct, safe gun behavior in front of your children, and also explaining how they work, and also killing that curiosity, no pun intended, but killing that curiosity by familiarizing them with that.
Absolutely. I mean, and I know this is probably never going to happen, but I don't see why in public schools have SROs, right? Why not bring in...
Maybe, depending if we still allow that to occur.
And some of them aren't even allowed to be armed.
But like, that's the thing is that, I mean, why would it be a bad thing for one day in like the semester with the high school seniors, once like they're 18 years old and can purchase a firearm, bring them into an assembly room or whatever, and the cop go, hey, these are firearms. Here's how they work. here are the fundamentals of gun safety, not injecting even like any opinions, like just here's what they are. It is a tool. Here's how to use them safely, and just call it a day. Because I mean, the fact of the matter is, like, they're not going to be able to avoid them. I mean, how many firearms are in circulation in this country? Like, they're going to run into one eventually.
Yeah, I mean, schools used to, and maybe some still do. So if you're familiar with, either you had it in your school when you went to school, or you're familiar with a school that does this, they had firearms clubs. They had shooting clubs. Probably not so much around here, but in the Midwest, I'm sure.
Justice Scalia used to often tell the story of, as a high school student, he was on the high school rifle team, and he would take a rifle on the subway and they would go to West Point for matches. And can you imagine doing that in this day and age?
I think that there's definitely responsibility on the part of the parents. And because guns have become this pariah in our society, people are afraid to talk about them. People are afraid to, and a lot of the parents these days probably don't even know anything about them to be teaching anyway. But they should, if you're going to have something like that in your house, you better be familiar with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, also kind of going back to what Andrew was talking about the slippery slope. I mean, what's stopping some very anti-gun prosecutor in some very blue jurisdiction of saying, well, the way you stored it wasn't good enough, so we're just going to prosecute. And then even if you are innocent, tying you up with legal fees, God knows how much time in court.
So, Alex, as we wrap up, what are your thoughts on the 2026 session as it relates to kind of what we were talking about?
Well, I think all the policies that we agree with aren't going to go anywhere. The ones that we don't like, it's going to be a question of, can they make it out of their original chamber, get a hearing over in the opposite one, then back over and pass before sine die? Because, I mean, truly, that is the biggest advantage that the Republicans have when it comes to stopping terrible bills, is that technically we do have time on our side, because once it hits midnight on sine die, any bill that's on the docket that hasn't been voted on is dead. You have to try again next year. I don't think that there's going to be anything groundbreaking or controversial that passes just because we're in an election year and no one wants to answer those questions and be held accountable. Shocking. I did hear some decent news from my fundraiser that I had on the 17th. Chris West said that the redistricting or gerrymandering, at least for this session, is dead. Bill Ferguson is not going to touch it. And he said something to the extent of also that the Democrat senators that were in favor of it, that were in leadership positions, have been relieved of their duties. So Bill actually is serious about that. So I'd say be on the lookout for perhaps certain policy changes, but a lot of mundane, non-controversial stuff is going to get through.
And please correct me if I'm wrong. We are having tremendous difficulty with the budget if we are not raising taxes, which I am not in favor of, how they're going to square the circle.
They're probably just going to do fee increases and things like that. Either way, I think that, and this goes regardless of political party and alignment, the Maryland state government needs to take a very, very hard look at itself and come to the reality that these initiatives and the things that they want to do just realistically are not going to happen. They need to be real with themselves. They need to realize, okay, maybe we need to take a step back, and this isn't just growing pains. Like, this could lead to collapse. I don't think it's going to happen because, I mean, I'm basically saying the part that everybody knows out loud. All the stuff that Westmore is doing, it only makes sense through the lens of him running for president. He's using us as a stepping stone because this is just going to collapse us for the sake of impressing some DNC donors.
Governor Moore is running for president of the United States of America, sir?
It's the worst kept secret in Annapolis. I remember making that point at sine die last year to someone in the Moore administration, and he jokingly went, were you read into like our internal memos or something? And I'm like, dude, it's not funny. This is my home.
So to all our lovely, loyal viewers, your opportunity to control who is in Annapolis is here. It is 2026. Look at these bills. Contact your legislators. If they give you answers you do not like, this is your chance to do something about it. There will be primaries, and there will be a general election. Find candidates you like, support them, attend their events, and most importantly, get out and vote, 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 early and often.
I mean, kind of piggybacking off of what Andrew just said, Our founders fired guns so that all we have to do now is fire politicians. That's simple.
And if I want to fire a politician and put you in office, Alex, where do I find you again?
www.alexfordelegate.com. My Instagram handle is AlexHarlan42A. My Facebook page is Alex Harlan. Checks are payable to friends of Alex Harlan.
With all that said, thank you for tuning in. Special thanks to our friends at Perdomo Cigars, as well as our special guest, Alex Harlan. Don't forget to comment, like, share, and subscribe. And remember, knowledge is mental ammunition. Train, fight, and win.